Well, I mean, we came into the office of county executive, at least I spent 6 years as county controller, so I felt pretty comfortable about the knowledge of Erie County's finances. But coming in as executive, it's one thing to know the finances of the county. It's another thing to be able to have to go in there and manage it. So we had to put together a management team. And we didn't get everybody in office by January 1. Some took some time just because we wanted to find the right people for the positions. And it just, when you take over a government with approximately 4,000 employees and representing a little less than 1 million people, there's always a lot on your plate. So just as you're trying to move ahead with maybe an agenda and a plan, other things sort of take you away from that because you just have to provide the services to the public. So we came in with the general idea of trying to restore the general consensus that the public may have had about what the county executive's office does, restore some decorum so it just wasn't the county executive as the king, but the county executive is part of a process working with the legislature and others to ensure that we provide the services to the general public. It's sort of like when I came in as comptroller, I had to restore the credibility of the comptroller's office after the red-green fiscal crisis. I felt I had a responsibility as well to restore just the general public's belief that the county executive is there to serve them, which wasn't necessarily what people felt. And that's why when we had the inauguration, one of the things I reminded folks is we don't represent taxpayers, we represent people of all ages, all sizes, whether they happen to be a taxpayer at their part of their life. We opened up the county executive's office on the first day to remind people this is your office. You own County Hall. This isn't some ivory tower that you can't come to. This is an ivory tower, and that it's white, but beyond that, it is your building. So we wanted to set the tone of this is not the kingdom, this is a county executive and an administration that works for you. And I think we were able to accomplish that pretty quickly. As people said, there's a general tone of change compared to what the prior administration was like. You're not always going to agree with the legislature, you're not always going to agree with your partners in government, so there's always going to be some communication that goes back and forth. That's fine. You just can't have the constant fighting like we'd seen in the prior 4 years. So that was a key that we wanted to do right away, and I think we accomplished that very quickly. Then, of course, we're moving ahead with my agenda with regards to economic development issues, spending more time focusing on businesses in Canada, and we've had some successes with that already this year. Outfront Portable Solutions is a Canadian company that ended up buying an American company that was going to go out of business to set up shop here. We've had the big success with Welded Tube, basically coming in and starting their American operations here when they could have done it anywhere. And with that also the rehabilitation and the economic development of the old Bethlehem Steel site, which hadn't happened ever in all reality except for the area around the port. And we're seeing those types of economic success stories that you hadn't seen in the past. Being from Lackawanna, maybe I have a more interest in seeing that site develop, but when you're talking about 400 acres of prime site on the waterfront that could be used for economic development, especially industrial development, and for it to not happen over 3 decades was a shame. And we had this opportunity and we weren't going to let it go by. And as a result, we believe we've opened up economic development opportunities for the rest of the site. So those are some key success stories that we had on the economic development front that no one else was really focusing on. As I've said, I don't know why prior administrations didn't focus on Canada for economic development opportunities. Canada is the United States' #1 trading partner. Toronto is their economic hub. Tremendous amount of economic business between the two countries goes right through the Peace Bridge, but it often was bypassing us. I want to ensure that it stops here and we get some of that big boom that we're seeing from our friends in Canada, and that has happened this year.
Why do you think it's happened this year? And I mean, I'm not so sure that previous administrations have been unaware of the possibilities. Is there something different about the way you've approached talking to potential business partners in Canada, or?
Well, we went up there, which truthfully hadn't been done before. We went up to the Court to Business Associations. I spent time up in various organizations in the Niagara Peninsula as well as in Toronto, saying, think about us. You come down here for our football games. You come down here for our Sabres games when the NHL is playing. You shop in our malls, but you don't think of us as an economic partner. And I think it's our own fault for just assuming that because we're neighbors, they're going to come here and set up their companies here when they're thinking about moving in the United States, and that's just not how it works. Everybody wants to be courted. And we went up there and we talked to them, and we continue to do that. It's not an easy process because you have the daily regimen of just governing. But if you forget that we have to go out there and sell ourselves, then we're never going to be able to achieve the success that we should. And that's what we did this year that I know prior administrations did not do.
So what is the pitch that you offer to a business saying, gosh, that's looking for looking to site in the U.S.? I mean, what about this region can you?
Well, I mean, we have tremendous assets with regard to transportation. We have tremendous assets with regards to our workforce. The closeness, truthfully, is an asset that most people might not think, but if you're a Canadian company and you're thinking about setting up shop in the United States, you could pick Texas, you could pick Florida, but there is an advantage to having your American subsidiary only a 90-minute drive away. You could be in your Canadian headquarters in Toronto in the morning, you could have a lunch meeting in Buffalo at your American headquarters, and then be back in time for dinner at home in Mississauga. So those are the things that we have an advantage of. And people talk about the tax base and they say, oh, New York's a high-taxed area. I said, well, compared to some parts of the country we are, but we certainly have much better advantageous situation when it comes to transportation, education, workforce. And I remind folks that our taxes are lower here than they are in Ontario. So when a Canadian company comes here and they look at us, they don't think our taxes are that high because they're generally lower than what they have to deal with in their home country.